work here? Okay,
Okay,
I just saw the recording. I live in Pittsburgh, so I don't know if anybody knows Pittsburgh.
No, actually, not many of us know about that.
Yeah.
In fact, if you don't mind, could you please introduce a little briefly, because I have just turned on the recording option.
Oh, okay. I can introduce myself again. Okay, I can say it again. Yeah, I can talk a little bit more about myself. Like I said, I come from Vietnam originally, and I came to the US as a graduate student doing a master's degree in teaching English. And then I found a job at a university. I was director of the English language program there for 12 years. I actually work with international students from all over the world. I also have Indian students also in the program. And I live in a city called Pittsburgh. So I was just asking, and now I'm the director of EduLink. I have classes and services to students, but I also have an app that you can download to practice speaking on your own or speaking with another student. So I encourage you to try it out. And I was just saying that I live in Pittsburgh, and maybe many of you don't know Pittsburgh, but I can share a screen. Let me see. I can share the Google Map. Yeah, I recorded a video introducing Pittsburgh, but I'm not showing the video now. I'm gonna show you the map. And I can share my screen. When I'm looking up, I'm just looking at my screen. Okay, I'm gonna zoom out so you can see the whole world, and then I'll show you where Pittsburgh is. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen, right? Okay, so if you you are in India, so you are in Asia, right?
Yes.
Really across the ocean here, the Pacific or the Atlantic Ocean, and then Europe, and then there you see India. So we are really far from each other, as you can see, really far. But I am here. If you look at the map of the United States here, it's also a big country, and you have Canada above it, Mexico here. And I am right here in Pittsburgh. So it is, and this is Washington, D.C., right? You know, the capital of the U.S., Washington, D.C. And this is New York. So perhaps you have heard of New York. And this is Pittsburgh. And it is about 4 hours for me to drive to Washington, D.C., and it's about 5 hours for me to drive to New York. So that's where I am. And I can talk more about it if you have questions for me. Okay? Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for your introduction. And we are so privileged today to have you as our guest. So we are waiting for the questions from my students. I would like to start with Somesri. Somesri, go ahead and ask the question.
Yes, sir. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
My name is Somesri, an educator student from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. I'm so proud to ask you a question. Can I ask, ma'am?
Sure, yes.
Could you please tell us about your unforgettable moments as an educator?
Oh, unforgettable moments as educator. Yeah, there's just so many unforgettable moments for sure. When I came to the US, I also got a scholarship, and my scholarship actually required me to teach English to international students when I was very new to the country. So I was nervous at first, but then, and I worked mostly with PhD students who still needed to improve their English so that they could teach other students in the US. So I was very nervous when I first taught them, but because I got a lot of support from my supervisor and my advisor, I was successful in teaching the students. I also remember a lot of field trips with my students. When I have international students here in the US, I also take them to many different places in the city. And to other places. So I still remember the trip to Washington, D.C., and we explored things together, the trips all around Pittsburgh, and we had a good time with each other. So those are some of the things that I can think of to answer your question. Yeah.
Thank you. Doctor, I have a question. In fact, you are actually born and brought up in Vietnam. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
so
that's
you
right.
came to U.S.A. Maybe to complete your course. So what kind of communicative barriers you faced in the beginning days of your stay in the U.S.A.? Because Vietnam accent, I mean English, Vietnamese speak English under the influence of Vietnamese language. For example, if you take me, I speak English under my mother tongue influence. So each language, I think, is different from place to place. So what kind of communicative barriers you faced at the time when you came to U.S.A. in the beginning of your stay?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I can tell you that when you are in a new place, there are just so many challenges, and linguistic challenges are just one of them, right? When I came to the US, I don't remember what kind of accent I had at that time, but when I learned English in Vietnam, I think mostly we learned British English. And you can see that my accent is very different now after all of those years. And when I learned English in Vietnam, I remember not having an opportunity to talk with any native speakers at all because I learned English a long time ago. I only had some opportunities to talk to 2 Singaporean teachers, right? And so just to show you that I only had very limited opportunities. But I was very motivated as a student. I listened to the radio a lot, BBC or Voice of America. I watched a lot of movies. I read a lot of newspapers like the Time magazine, and I studied really hard. So when I came to the US, people always complimented my English. And they even thought that I usually used really good words, really big words. I don't know whether that was a good compliment or just means I used too many big words. So I feel that I didn't have problems with my accent, but listening was difficult. Listening to people who speak English here and who talk about things that I didn't know was difficult. And if you, maybe it's easier for you now because you have so many opportunities to know about so many things all over the world with the internet. But when I came here, listening was difficult. Another challenge was that there was a lot of work being a student, so many assignments, so many readings, and the lectures were difficult. So I had to work really hard in terms of reading more and trying to understand more. Writing was also challenging, but I was actually pretty good at it. And because I was good at writing, I got really good grades.
Wow.
All of my grades were A, and only a few, maybe 2 or 3 are A minus. So that was my journey when I first came here.
Wow, so inspirational to all my students, including me. So thank you so much for sharing those things. And here is another question coming from one of the students. Jessica, over to you.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
This is Jessica, an 8th grade student from Z.P.H.S School, Ilavaram. I'm so honored to ask you a question. Can I ask, ma'am?
Yes, sure.
What can be the best method in language acquisition?
Oh, wow, that's a big question. I think I say that it's a big question because it's something that all of us have been trying to find the answer to. And sometimes the nature of finding an answer to a big question is that you can only find one small piece of information at a time, or you can try different things to see what works for you. But this reminds me of a Facebook reel. Have you ever heard of that? A very short video that I just made.
Okay.
About what is optimal for language learning, right? What is best for language learning? And
Yes.
in that video, I mentioned the input, mean the comprehensible input that you have, what you hear, and what you see. So you need to actually read a lot and listen a lot to get the input, the language input in your mind, right?
Yes.
And then you also need to have output. Output is what you produce. In speaking, like when you ask me a question, or in writing, when you write something short or an email. So you also need to do that to improve your language. And then in terms of language production, interaction is important. So if you just produce language by recording a video, it's not enough. You need to interact with other people, like with me now. The reason why interaction is important is that through interaction, you can listen, right? You get the input, you get to talk.
Yes.
You get the feedback. If I don't understand you, I may ask a question, and then you realize, oh, maybe I need to talk in a different way. So you get the feedback through interaction, and that will also drive language development. So I hope I answer your questions: input, output, interaction, and feedback, right?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So
Thank
I
you,
have, Doctor,
into my
I have seen some of your videos. In fact, you have shared on Facebook. They are absolutely amazing to watch and very informative also.
Thank you.
Yeah. Nandakishore, over to you.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is Nandakishore, an educator student from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. I would like to ask you a question. Can I ask, ma'am?
Yeah, sure.
What is your favorite word in English and why?
Oh, okay, that's a good question. And I have answered this question several times because it's one of my favorite questions to ask to students also. What's your favorite word or 3 words? I often say it's your favorite 3 words. One of my favorite words for some reason is this word. I'll type it in the chat. Flourish. Flourish.
Flourish. Yes.
Yeah. So this words is like when you do really well, when you bloom like a flower, then you're flourishing.
Yes.
So it's just the sound is interesting to me, the meaning is interesting to me, and I also hope that in whatever situation we are in, we can flourish, we can do well, and we can do better. So that's one of my favorite words. Thank you for asking.
Thank you so much. Tanmaisri, over to you.
Yes, sir. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
My name is Tanmaisri, an 8th grader from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. I would like to ask one question, ma'am. Can I ask, ma'am?
Yes.
Why is English so important?
Can you tell me, maybe some of you can type in the chat. I am curious about your ideas also. Yes. Why do you think English is important? Maybe give me some ideas in the chat, and then I'll...
Students, please text a few messages on chat box. Why do you think English is so important from your point of view?
Yeah, and that is more important. That is more important for you to ask yourself, why is English important? Why do you think that it is important? And if you want to improve it, find a reason for why you're doing something. So for example, you're listening to me right now, maybe it's boring, but if you can find one reason why, something that you like about it, then that will really push your learning. So I want to ask you, actually, why do you think English is important? If you just type in the chat, Job, yes.
So many more messages I need from students, please. So you can even interact with ma'am and you can answer to this question from your point of view. Yes.
Okay, Job, I can see 2 answers. So you think that it's important to know English for a better job. So this, maybe let me use my video again. I made another video about motivation, right? Motivation gives you the reasons for doing something. And people often say that in order to be successful, you need to have motivation. You need to understand why you do something. So for some of you, it seems like you want to have a good job. That's a good motivation. But there's other types of motivation that help people to do better in English learning. One is called intrinsic motivation, the motivation that comes from you, from inside of you. You learn English because it's fun, because it's enjoyable. You get to know other people. So that is the intrinsic motivation. Many of you think of learning English to find a good job. It is called an instrumental motivation. You want to use English as a tool to achieve something else. And that's good too, right? So I would just agree with you in saying that learning English is important because it's useful for your life. Maybe it will help you to find a good job. It allows you to communicate with people across the globe, like you with me. And this is maybe something you don't realize, but it is why it is important, maybe more important than finding a job. Yes. When you learn English, maybe you have access to knowledge that you may not be able to find if you just know one language, right? So there's just so much knowledge out there that is in English. Then by knowing English, you have access to this knowledge. But I have to say that now translation is very advanced. So even if you don't know English, I'm sure that you will find ways to gain the kind of knowledge you want to gain. But I want to point out a few things. Okay. Someone say communicate easily. Yes, yes. Maybe that's the biggest reason why people learn English, to communicate with people from other countries. Yeah. And
Doctor, here in India, we have a very complex situation, and unlike USA. In USA, I think everybody try to speak English so that the communication becomes easy. But in India, we have many regional languages. Each state has its own regional language. So the problem in India is if you don't learn English, you can't communicate with your fellow Indian. Yeah. So that is the complexity here in India. Yeah. Which is wonderful in a way that you get to learn multiple languages. And actually, there's so much research out there that when you know different languages, there are more connections in the brain. And then your brain grows bigger. So think of it as something that really fortunate that you have, that you can learn different languages. Yes, Subramanian Srinivas.
Okay. Hello, ma'am. Good morning.
Good morning.
This is Subramanian Srinivas, 8th grade student from Z.P.H.S School, Ilavaram. I would like to ask a question. Can I ask, ma'am?
Yes, please.
What three factors are essential for language acquisition?
Oh, okay. I think someone already asked that question and I can repeat it. You asked about three factors for language acquisition. I mentioned the input, things that you read and listen. You need to do a lot of it. And then also the output, you have to produce language by speaking and writing, but also interact with other people so that you can get the feedback that you need to improve your English. So those, I would say those would be the really important factors. Input, output, interaction, right?
Thank you so much. Mamata, over to you. Mamata, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
How are you, ma'am?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. This is Mamata. I'm an 7th grader. I'm from Z.P.H.S School, Ilavaram. Can I ask one question, ma'am?
Yes.
Would you mind sharing some incredible facts about Pittsburgh?
Yeah, facts about Pittsburgh. Yeah. I just shared the map and I can share again. And let me see here. if I can zoom into Pittsburgh, this is Pittsburgh, right?
Sir,
Okay, so let me see. Some facts about Pittsburgh. I just mentioned that it's about 4 hours from Washington, D.C. It's 5 hours from New York. So it's on the northeast of the U.S., right? The U.S. is a big country. So something that I want to mention is that Pittsburgh has 3 rivers. And this one is the Allegheny River. It's called the Allegheny River here. And this one is called the Monongahela River, a typical name, I know. And when the 2 rivers meet here, then there's a new river is formed. It is called the Ohio River. So one fun fact about Pittsburgh is that it has 3 rivers, okay? 2 rivers meet to form another river. And because it's also very hilly, there are a lot of hills and mountains. That's why Pittsburgh has a lot of bridges. And I forgot the number, maybe over 400, but it has the most bridges in the world. It has even more bridges than Venice in Italy. So those are the 2 fun facts of Pittsburgh. It is also home to many good universities. So I can show you, maybe if I zoom in here, it has a lot of big parks here. I can show you where I live. I live somewhere over here. Oh, here, O'Hara. I live somewhere here. So I'm in the suburbs of the city, right? Here in this area. And Chatham University, where I worked, is here in Shadyside. But it also has some really good universities, and I will mention one. I cannot find it here, Shenley Park. Okay, maybe it doesn't show unless I zoom in here. And I can show here, maybe it's more interesting to look at this. So this university is really famous. I'm sure there are a lot of Indian students here because it is one of the best in computer science. This university, one of the best in the US and in the world in computer science, including robotics. So when President Obama came to Pittsburgh, he went there to visit the Robotics Institute. They're very strong with artificial intelligence. Maybe you hear about it. Yes, so yes. So I want to mention Carnegie Mellon University here as a fun fact about Pittsburgh. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing the very informative information for Indians, especially because Indians are fancying their chances all the time to become a software job technicians. So that's why all the universities in the world offer special packages for the Indian students. So, Gayatri,
I'm happy to share more about later on about universities here. Yeah.
That's going to be very informative for us. Gayatri Vavati.
Yeah.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
My name is Gayatri, an 8th grader from Jilla Parishad High School, Ilavaram. I am very excited to ask you a question, ma'am. Can I ask, ma'am?
Yes, please.
Who inspired you to become an English language expert?
Yeah, that's a good question, but I don't think I can mention any one person because it is a long journey, right? It started when I started to learn English when I was maybe 11 years old, just a little bit younger than you are. And then I specialized in English. I was very motivated and ambitious. I always wanted to be the number 1 in the class. So I worked really hard. And then when I went to college, I also majored in English. And after that, I wanted to study abroad, right? So I worked really hard, but I also applied to different universities in the US. And I got a scholarship and I came here. and I just continued my journey. So, but I have to say that when I continued with my journey, I met a lot of people, and then they became role models for me, right? I saw the things that they did that I would never imagine that I would do, but because I knew them and they could do it, so it started giving me ideas. So I would say that a lot of people became my models just because I got to talk to them, I got to see what they do, and then they gave me ideas of what I could do also. And then the world becomes kind of smaller when you get to know more people. So that's my answer to your question. A lot of people are my role models.
Yes, thank you so much. And here is another question. Madhavi, over to you. Madhavi, are you there? Madhavi. Okay, it looks like she is having some problems. And meanwhile, I would like to ask one question. So, have you ever faced any difficulty in adjusting with the food that is available in the U.S.A? Because Vietnamese food is a bit different from the food that is consumed in the U.S.A. So in the beginning the days of your stay in the U.S.A, and have you ever faced any issues regarding the food?
Yeah, good question. I love Indian food, by the way. But yes, when I came to the US, I cooked a lot because I was a student at that time and I didn't have much money to go out to eat out anyway. So I cooked a lot, and I did miss the kind of ingredients that I had in Vietnam, because the food that I cooked in the US was never as good as the food in Vietnam. And then at that time, I was not used to cheese. I didn't have cheese in Vietnam. I didn't like pizza. I didn't like hamburger. I didn't like a lot of the food here. But gradually I got used to it, and now I like all kinds of food. And I like food from other countries also. So in my family, I still cook rice because it's very common in Vietnam. So every week I would still have a dish with rice. But then if I just cook rice, I'm also bored with it. So I always have a combination of different dishes from different countries, like pasta, right? Is something that we also eat a lot. Pizza, my husband and I sometimes make pizza. Hamburgers, steak, and things like that. I know that maybe you don't eat that kind of food. And sometimes we go out to eat, so we eat all kind of foods. But yeah, that's how I adjust.
Yes. Here is another question. What kind of cultural differences you have noticed in the USA? Of course, in terms of the culture and tradition, Vietnam has its unique culture and tradition, whereas the USA has its own definition for the culture and tradition. So what kind of cultural differences you have noticed, and what, especially which culture that you like most in the context of USA? Which culture you like so much in the USA?
Yeah, I cannot say what culture I like the most. Like anything, when you live in a new culture, you adjust gradually. And you start to learn new things that you never thought of before. When you live in your own culture, maybe you don't really look at it from the outside and analyze it and understand it. It's just like a fish in the water, right? You don't even notice your culture. But then when I moved to the US, then I kind of started to understand the Vietnamese culture in the context of the whole world and in the relationship with the US. So, for example, whenever I in the US, the Vietnam War is still a kind of a dominant memory. So when people see me, they often talk to me about it. And to me, it is not something that stands out in my mind whenever I think of my own country. So that is just an example. and then I started to see the Vietnam War from a different perspective, right? And there are refugees in the U.S. who come from Vietnam after the war. And when I was in Vietnam, they would be portrayed as traitors and terrible people. But now that I know so many of them in the U.S., I understand their stories more. I understand their experiences more. So I can just tell you that by coming to the U.S., I come to understand my own culture and different aspects of history better.
Okay, thank you. So my
Sir.
kids, yes, Madhavi, do you have question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, ma'am. I am so glad today to ask you a question. Here my question is, what is more important, speaking, reading, writing, or listening?
I think they are all important, but maybe it depends on the stage of your language learning. When you first learn a language, like I say, you may need more input, right? So you may need to listen more and read more. It also depends on the age. Young children learn English by mostly speaking and listening. But when you are older, when you can read, then reading is a good source of input for you. And there's just so many interesting things to read, right? Speaking is important in many situations or contexts, just because maybe you don't have a lot of opportunities to speak. Not like me in the US, I have to speak all the time. Like you, maybe you don't have enough opportunities, then it becomes important because you don't have enough opportunities. Writing is important for school. If you come here as a student and you want to have good grades and you want to do really well, you need to write well, because most assignments are in writing. The higher level you go, the more writing you have to do. So I can say that it depends. But writing is the most challenging skills for international students here. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, that's true. In fact, I
Thank
do.
you so much, ma'am, for answering to my question.
Yeah.
So,
You're
yes,
welcome.
doctor, here my students, in fact, all these kids are actually a part of a village, which is a small hamlet located, it's called Ilavaram. It is part of southern part of India. So most of these kids' parents are the farmers, wage earners, and underprivileged families. But these kids are so passionate about communicating with the educators across the globe. I am giving them a great platform like this to improve their communicative skills. So every day I organize one session and where I teach some communicative skills. And now and then I invite great guest speakers like you to communicate with them. So, but in the classroom setup, most of my students are reluctant to speak English language because they are so interested to speak their regional language. Whenever I ask them to speak English, of course, some of the students are so passionate about speaking English, but some students I am unable to bring them to my view of speaking English. So could you please give us some suggestions? How can I make the other students to speak English in order to make them global citizens?
Yeah. Well, thank you for the question. And I really admire your effort to bring speakers to the classroom and organize activities for the students. We only knew each other through Facebook, but so you have a great teacher here who really wants to create opportunities for you. So it is a difficult question for sure, but maybe because of my experience, I want to suggest maybe sometimes putting students in pairs, right? But even when you put students in pairs or in a group, you need to provide them enough materials and structure and support so that they know what to talk about. My expertise is in task-based language teaching. You develop tasks so that students have a reason to communicate with each other and complete that task together. So a concrete idea can be to use some tasks in the classroom and put students in pairs and in groups. Try that to see if students are more willing to speak in the classroom. But yeah, of course, maybe there are more ideas that you can do in terms of maybe students can do a project and record a video together. So the key is to get them to talk with each other, not just to you, I think.
Yes, absolutely. I do agree with you. And that's what exactly these kids are implementing in the classroom. In the beginning days, I instructed them not to speak regional languages, but I have motivated them many times. But now, today, they voluntarily speak English because of the motivation. And here is my last question, because every minute of your time is so precious for us. So for the beginners, what kind of grammar topics, what grammar topics do you recommend to be introduced to the beginners?
Okay, maybe I'm the wrong person to ask this question because maybe I have a more radical view towards grammar now. On the one hand, grammar is everything. Grammar is the structure of the language. Whenever you put two words together, you use grammar. Okay, so grammar is different from vocabulary in that whenever you put words together, you need to have some kind of structure for the two words to make sense. So on the one hand, grammar is everything. On the other hand, learning one rule at a time, learning one grammatical feature at a time doesn't help you to use language and develop your language. So my suggestion would be for the beginners level, you can use tasks again. So for example, if I'm talking to you today, let's just say I'm trying to teach Vietnamese to you, right? And it is completely the beginner level. I'm not going to explain present tense or past tense to you. I may start with teaching you how to say hello by saying hello to you, right? Xin chào, right?
Yeah.
And I can write it. So it gives you a reason to communicate here because we are trying to learn to get to know each other. But we are not teaching grammar. It's not necessary to teach grammar at the beginner level. That would be my answer. Maybe you didn't expect that, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for giving your valuable inputs. And before we wind up the session, could you please give me a final message to my students?
So thank you for having me. And I am very impressed with the way you communicate with me. All of you give an introduction and ask me for permission to ask the question. That's my impression as well. So I'm very impressed with your motivation and your ability to communicate across borders to someone like me. So I would just advise you to, again, I'll mention it, find a reason why you are learning English, right? Or find a reason why you need to do a certain activity. Even today, when you talk to me, maybe think of one thing that you learn. That makes the difference. Find one reason why you're doing something that you're doing. Find one point of learning in whatever situation you are in. And that's how we improve our knowledge. So just keep going, keep it up.
Thank you so much for your valuable time. We learned so much about your region and about the language acquisition and many more factors. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to see you one more time, maybe in the future, if you permit us. And we will see you again one more time.
Yeah, definitely. And try my app to see if you can connect with another student to practice talking in pairs. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Please share that app so that we can try here in my school too.
Yeah. Oh, can we take a picture? Do you want to take a picture together?
Yeah, you please take the picture, and I have a problem with my desktop.
Okay. So if anyone wants to come on the screen and smile, I'll take a picture. I'll count 1, 2, 3, right? Come on screen now.
Turn on your video, please.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Smile. Okay. I will share this with your teacher.
Yeah, you can share it on Facebook, no problem.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day. Bye for now.
Have a good day. Yeah, bye.
Bye, ma'am.